All right, I'm going to keep myself honest. It's 11:02. We are going to kick it off, y'all. Welcome to the webinar from Configure to Close. Today, it's all about HubSpot CPQ. We're glad to be able to share this with you. Let me do a round of introductions for those who may have joined a little bit late. First of all, we've got Adam Wainwright with HubSpot. He is HubSpot's CPQ product lead. He's here to share what's new, why HubSpot is approaching CPQ a little bit differently than some other players in the space. Chad Seals, Fast Slow Motion's Chief Technology Officer. He's also a CPQ subject matter expert, has spent years helping other companies implement CPQ successfully. And I'm Eric Hush. I'm the Chief Tongue Twister at Fast Slow Motion. I'm the head of growth over here, and I'll be your host today. Before we dive in, quick note on what to expect. Our goal is to give you a tactical look at how CPQ solves real world problems and how HubSpot is changing the game with AI and unified commerce. Whether you're evaluating CPQ for the first time or replacing a legacy tool, after this session, you will walk away with, number one, a clear sense of how CPQ can reduce friction in your sales process. Number two, how HubSpot's AI-powered approach fits into a unified revenue platform. And number three, you'll have some practical next steps to take back to your team. So let's dig in. Here's the agenda. We're going to start with why CPQ matters in today's sales process and why quoting is often the point where deals slow down or stall entirely. We're going to dig into some real world problems that CPQ solves. So things like the cold start problem in quote creation, data silos that make forecasting unreliable, slow manual approval processes, and the poor buyer experience. Our poor buyers that come from static quotes and back and forth emails just can be incredibly frustrating. After the problems, we're going to talk about why CPQ built or why HubSpot built CPQ inside Commerce Hub and how being unified, AI-powered, and CRM native makes this solution different than the other options that are out on the market today. Then it's going to be the fun part. I'm going to toss the stick over there to Adam. He's going to go into a live demo. You're going to see HubSpot CPQ in action. And finally, we're going to wrap it up with a Q&A session with our panel. And we'll point you to some resources you can take away to kind of explore next steps. With that, is everybody ready to get going? Let's do it, man. Chad.
Born ready. Let's do it.
Chad, what exactly is CPQ and why does it matter to sales teams?
Yeah, I want to spend the least amount of time possible setting the foundation so that we can get to the demo. I'm incredibly excited about sharing that with you. So let's just start with the basics, right? CPQ is the most misunderstood 3 letters in CRM. CPQ stands for configure, price, and quote. And all that really means is that it's a tool that was purpose built to help sales teams build accurate quotes quickly, by enabling them to build really complex product like selection and bundling and enforcing product rules and pricing rules and workflows, really just ensuring consistency across a rather complex quoting process. So just kind of breaking that CPQ down, configure. All that means is just walking the seller through adding valid products and options to a quote and prevents them from adding the things that they shouldn't. Price. So this is doing the math for the seller. No more back of the napkin, no more complex spreadsheet. It just does the hard math on their behalf. And then the quote. That's the production of that clean, branded, signable document that's ready for review and then send off to the prospect. So the problem with CPQ is that traditionally, the tools that have been purpose-built to solve these problems have been clunky, they've been hard to use for sellers, and as the technologist, they are disconnected from the CRM. And what this does is it slows the sales reps down. It creates data silos that we have to help our clients solve by integrating systems. And the only alternative, if you don't integrate those systems, is you add on extra systems or extra people, extra processes, things like deal desk, just to get a quote out the door. And that problem is what causes the sellers to slow down and adds friction to the sales process, and ultimately leads to stoppage. And Adam, this is where you could
I
step
love
in.
that. So listen, first of all, massive, massive shout out and thanks to the Fast Slow Motion team. It was so great to see you guys at Inbound just a few weeks ago. Yes, indeed, HubSpot is making massive investments to continue the promise of helping our customers deliver a more unified story. So Chad, you teed it up really, really well. Disconnected, siloed systems that are meant to accelerate go-to-market feels like it's really hard to make that a potentially true statement. So that's first and foremost how we're going to help with CPQ. Let's do this. Let's jump to the next slide. And I'm going to say, so I spent my career in revenue operations and revenue operations systems and tooling. I sold forecast AI technology. I started in CPQ and CLM. And I've run about 4 or 5 different sales teams over the years, a couple of exits. But the key thing that I remember always feeling was we could get a really killer sales process, but CPQ always ended up being the hurdle that slowed us down. It was just an inevitable truth. And it didn't matter how many potential products existed in the book. At the end of the day, using a system like CPQ has traditionally been fraught with just a lot of hurdles and struggles. And so when we think about the various people that end up dealing with this problem, right? For a lot of reps, building a single quote can take, 30, 45 an hour, right? Just simply trying to get data from an Excel spreadsheet into something that actually resembles a quote, right? Once the quote is even built, now we've got an approvals issue where we've got multiple cross-functional partners internal to the business that are meant to enable pricing strategy, protecting margin, right? That becomes a new set of hurdles and roadblocks. Meanwhile, the rep is trying to get this quote out the door because the customer said, sign me up, right? Now finance is impacted because finance simply lacks the ability to really understand what's happening in the field, right? As approvals aren't necessarily working the way that they potentially should. And at the end of the day, this ultimately slows down our total revenue strategy. So this is key for finance. We want to unlock and accelerate the things that at the executive level we've identified as being important to our growth plan, right? And of course, leaders now are sort of stuck figuring out how to pick up the pieces and perhaps communicate to the executive team, maybe even to the customer, on why the quoting process is just not necessarily a smooth process. But finally, the audience that we want to make sure we're also thinking about, that we took a lot of care and time to think about at HubSpot, is the actual customer, right? The experience is usually coming to them in terms of a static PDF, which definitely will require a ton of back and forth, especially in this negotiation phase. How many times has a seller had to reproduce a quote 9 times because of 1 or 2 quick little asks from the customer at that last mile? So if any of these pains feel similar, or these are the kinds of things that you're currently dealing with, this is exactly why we built CPQ at HubSpot and why we're thinking about it a little bit differently. So Eric, if you would. So CPQ, it's again, it's really meant to, what I want to make sure we're understanding here is that CPQ is often associated with like the sales process. It's like the last step of the sales process. Whereas our approach is CPQ as indeed the first step of the revenue process, meaning it's the thing that opens the door to the downstream teams, accounts receivable, deliverable teams, deployment teams, fulfillment teams. CPQ really is meant to be the ultimate unifier so that the data associated with what the customer is going to be getting value from purchasing enables us to actually deliver on that promise of value. And so sales teams are going to need speed. They're going to need visibility. They're going to need to be accurate. right? The operations teams spend a ton of time stitching together all of these yesterday siloed business systems to drive these business critical workflows. And of course, finance has these obligations to shareholders to protect margins, adhere to compliance. And of course, revenue operations leaders are trying to look at all of these different swirling needs from the business in a way where we can produce efficiencies so that we can scale through the friction as we grow our business. Lastly, another audience that I definitely want to make sure I touch on is oftentimes when our systems are disconnected and we're dealing with all of this friction, the executive team can come up with a really killer plan, but it's really hard to execute in a world where these systems find themselves external to the very systems that like our sales teams are using to drive the go-to-market process.
Yeah, and Adam, I'll add on this one, and you mentioned it on the last slide, is that it's not just your business that's impacted by CPQ, it's your buyer. The buyer experience has been top of mind. So I know as we've been working with HubSpot, as they've been building out this product, I've heard time and time again from product leadership, how is this impacting the seller? And how is this impacting the buyer? So having that buyer is the tunnel vision of it has to be a slick, effortless experience is so impactful. So who's CPQ for? It's not on this slide, but it's top of mind. It's for the buyer.
I love that. And you know, we're in a unique opportunity as we move into the future to create more experiences. This is really what the world is looking for. And this is certainly something that HubSpot, as I think our audience here knows, is really keen to continue making investments in. The whole key for sellers, the quote really is sort of the first formal representation of what it means to partner with my business. Yes, I've been a good face and a good steward of a good sales process or evaluation, but that quote can't all of a sudden then undermine everything that I've done, all the work I've done in the cycle. And so absolutely, we ultimately want to create a frictionless experience that also delights the customer, but also potentially enables some things like automation of like vendor acceptance. Hey, I'm going to sign the deal. Can I also pay for the product in a single pass experience so I don't have to go ask a member of my team to chase down our vendor acceptance processes or steps? These are minor details that when looked in a vacuum kind of feel like they can all happen separately, but when you bring them together, you can really change or create differentiation with your customers in terms of they'll remember you better because, hey, you're driving a memorable closing experience, which again, really is just the opening experience to what I call value day, right? The day that we actually thank you for allowing us to partner with you.
I love that. And keeping that momentum, right? It's like, you know, not only the experience for the buyer, which we want to put our best foot forward at all stages in the sales process. We definitely don't want to get caught up here. And a lot of companies do. They get caught up right there in that quote. So let's just kind of ping pong back and forth. I'll start. You know, we call it the cold start problem. It's that, you know, every rep when they get to this stage starts from a blank quote. So they got to start, they got to build the quote from scratch. They got to remember where the spreadsheet or template was. They got to hope they follow all the rules. You know, it's a struggle. And the rep, you know, this is a pressure situation. They've got a handful of other opportunities. So, you know, it's that manual spreadsheet, the copy paste. Basically, it's slow and even worse yet, it's inconsistent. That process isn't repeatable every time, isn't right every time. So, you know, we start to impact even other parts of the organization, not only the sales team, the finance team, and folks downline.
Yeah, I love these bullets. That cold start problem, it's real for any of us who's ever carried a bag. Every time my customer says, hey, send me a quote, there's at least 70% of my audience out there that go, dang it, now I got to go figure something out. And that's an absolute disaster. But at the end of the day, if you go way above and beyond where we think CPQ should be driving business critical value, it really should provide guidance. It should demonstrate white space. It should demonstrate margin protection. There's a ton of opportunity for us to play. And while what we're going to talk about today is a ton of efficiencies based on introducing AI into the quoting process. The good news for us and the good news for our customers certainly will be that we only expect to continue making more and more investments to overcome these challenges, which are typically associated with more like traditional systems.
Absolutely. And I'll just, closing out this slide, I think as a revenue leader in the company, we talk about the scalable business framework. We wrote the book on scaling businesses, and one of the tenets of that framework is visibility. And if you don't have the processes consistent, you don't have everything working the right way, it is impossible to surface the data that we need. Our commission gets all over the map. It's hard for us to repeat our success. So that visibility for leaders is really a key value point here as well.
I love that. And this is okay. So this slide is near and dear to my heart. I was so pleased when y'all had brought this up, because during my entire career, I had come across we deployed a legacy system at a bigger company that I was at before we got acquired by SAP. And this was a data point that I had learned about early, which was, how do we actually wrangle a strategy? How do I use my business systems and my processes, and of course my people, to actually go and deliver on a strategy? And this was an example of a data point that was put together by a study. This is a few years old, but it's absolutely true for those of us who understand how we can focus on net retention with our customers, right? The study from Zuora simply said that we can boost revenue by as much as 22 or even 30% when we have an amendment play, when we have an amendment strategy, upsells, cross-sells, expansion. Right now, that feels fairly intuitive, but remember that in a traditional CPQ, if I'm generating a PDF, that means the data associated with what my customer has purchased now has to get swivel chaired perhaps into a different system. The downstream teams perhaps apply their own elements associated with getting that data into that system. And as a result, now when I want to potentially upsell or expand my customer, I have to go tap on extra resources to figure out how to do that. There's no place that is also coincidentally in the same place that for me as a seller, I'm using to drive my deals, that will help me immediately identify how to expand, how to renew, how to upsell, how to cross-sell, how to prorate, how to co-term, how to extend one component, but not necessarily the other. That is all now disparate systems and disparate teams that I typically have to shoulder tap, which means we're leaving money on the table, especially as it pertains to an amendment strategy. So this is a really important data point to our strategy in the Commerce Hub. CPQ is but a domino in a larger set of dominoes and a larger framework where we're going to enable not only the ability to close a deal, but take that data and push it downstream so that now when my install team, my account management team, my customer success team, or my net new sellers who also happen to own the expansion business, now they're calling up the quote and they're seeing where they are in a point of time, so that when the customer says, hey, I need more XYZ, or I want to go ahead and get on the new XYZ, the seller can execute that plan without any problems, without any friction. It's all right there in the same unified system that drives the entire lead all the way down to the revenue process. So this is a subtle data point, but the net headline here is that without a net retention strategy and amendment strategy and the systems and processes that will enable it, we find that accounts, and Zuora did this study, that businesses are leaving as much as 22 to 30% of money on the table. In this case, you can see on the upsell side, 43% of revenue on the table. So it's a massive, massive revenue leakage area that we aim to really suture up here by delivering tremendous more value here in the Commerce Hub, above and beyond CPQ.
And I know the leaders on the webinar right now are thinking this is excellent. Let's take this point of friction, this point of contention, this pain in our butts, and let's flip the script. Let's turn it into a growth engine.
That's it.
Let's keep rolling here.
Yeah. So okay, is this on me or is this you, Eric?
This one's on you.
Okay, I love it. So now we're going to transition a little bit into giving the audience something that I think they're all here to see. which is the product. But to tee this up, what I really want to make sure we're doing is I'm helping the audience understand two very important things. The first thing is long-term big picture strategy. We're going to be making continuous investments in this space so that we can not only enable a streamlined CPQ process for sellers, but again, it's all in service of enabling things like revenue strategy, including my upsell and cross-sell processes, so that I can continue to scale and accelerate my business per my shareholders' expectations. That said, if there's only three things that we walk away from today remembering, it will be that I'm going to show you how we built the product with speed for the sales team in mind, right? With AI assistance, reps can generate professional, accurate quotes in minutes. The second that I want to make sure I'm showing you today is control, right? We're going to enforce the appropriate guardrails, a really important part of CPQ, so that we can protect revenue margin and we can continue to build and scale our business profitably. We're going to show you how to do that using our approvals engine. And then the third thing, which to your point, Eric, is absolutely critical, and it's an easy thing to say, but it is really hard to pull off, visibility, right? I'm going to show you a couple of elements. In this case, we're driving visibility both to the seller so that we can hold our buyers accountable to deadlines. Deals have deadlines, as well as the business. And I would only say, expect us to make way more investments in driving way better revenue visibility, because that, again, is ultimately our true North Star. So today we're going to look at speed, visibility, and control.
Perfect. Well, I think, that tees us up nicely, man. Do you want to grab the
Let's see, yeah.
of the screen there and show us a little bit of a live demo?
I'm going to grab the rock here. So let's go ahead and let me just slide this thing over. Now, to keep this story really, really clear here, I'm going to sort of start in the sales workspace, because indeed, as I mentioned, first of all, remember that the CPQ product and the future state of Commerce Hub as we continue to make investments is to really be the first domino to fall in your revenue strategy. But as a seller, I'm going to launch my quote from the same sales workspace. So I've got some quotes here that are going to simply, just like they did before, we're going to launch into the new CPQ editor. A couple of data points to call out. Of course, we're going to ingest any data that you've potentially identified as being germane to how you close a deal. So I've got a PO number here and a shipping method.
Adam, let me stop you. I'm
Yeah.
not sure you're sharing your screen yet.
Oh, I'm not sharing it. I got it on. Let me see here.
Eric, I see the screen.
Do you?
Oh, I was going to say, I got the green box. I'm seeing the green box.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm seeing something
all
different on
good.
my side. Did not mean to trip you up there.
Eric,
I tell you what,
watch
Chad,
the recording.
Yeah. Chad, tell me, you're seeing right now that I'm in the sales workspace and I got some deals that are healthy and perhaps others that aren't?
That's exactly right.
Okay, beautiful. Okay. So I start here, but before I kind of do the workflow, what I want to do first is I want to demonstrate something that's really important. I'm going to jump into the actual quotes, the new quotes section that's nested right here under the wallet, the Commerce Hub, right? So you would just, in the new environment, click on quotes and we'll bring you to this screen. And the first thing you're going to see is we've added this new capability called Analyze. This is for sellers to create visibility when they send their quotes out and they send all of these little quotes out into the world. How are they able to then create an accountability system, a feedback mechanism of all the signal data when customers are opening up and engaging with those quotes? So you can see now I've got this quote that is looking really, really healthy. And I've got others where perhaps my customer in this case has not opened it once. So now I'm going to give the seller more control and more visibility over what's actually happening so that we can better make a predictable business, we can forecast better, and we can ultimately create those appropriate nudges to help our customer close the deal. We'll go so far as to ensure that we're identifying who's opening these things, who's viewing these things. We're going to be doing a lot more investment here. But again, the idea is give better visibility to the seller and even the frontline leaders so we can build those plays and we can run those plays to ensure that we're closing those committed deals that we forecasted and rolled up to the business. So I'm starting there just to quickly show this is an example of what I mean by visibility for the sales team. One of my favorite elements. So what I'm going to do now, the next thing I'm going to show you is, I'm going to jump back to, I'm going to put on my sales hat. I'm here in the quotes. And before I launch into the quote, I do want to make sure I say that the second element that we talked about was control, right? So the first way that we're going to enable control for our sellers, I'm going to go ahead and click add here, is we've now got a rich ability to create templates. Now, templates are going to give my seller the ability to overcome the cold start problem, right? And so what we can now do is we can create templates that are segmented on a variety of attributes, geo, business pane, product type, business segment, if I have a mid-market or an enterprise team. So the net headline is the sellers will know which templates are going to be applicable to them so that when they jump in there, they don't have to go completely start from scratch. So let's actually look at a quick template, because this is actually going to give you a nice point of view on how we've thought about the new quoting experience. So right now, I am in the new quote, but I'm in the template section. So the first thing I'll call out is that, yes, the quoting experience, net new right now, the foundation that we're building on top of is a single what you see is what you get editing experience. Now, as a template, you can see I can simply add text boxes to create additional experiences for my customers, depending on what I ultimately want that template to do. And so when I click into this new text box that I've just added, this new content section, you can see I've got my editing panel. I can insert videos, I can insert images, I can insert snippets, right? And even better, I can grab those data points that existed at the deal level. For example, I had shipping method or I had PO number, right? So the idea now is I can now insert, and we can do a default value. I can simply insert these personalization tokens so that when this is associated with a deal, we'll grab all of that data that we need to actually render out on this quote. So just a couple of examples of some ways that our templates are going to make it really, really easy for our sellers to overcome the cold start problem. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and just delete this guy just for the sake of this thing. Actually, in fact, yeah, let's just do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and publish this just to quickly render it out. And then we're going to jump. Now I'll transition into actually generating and actually using AI in my quote. This is really slick. So in this case, as the seller, say I'm in that sales workspace and I click add quote, what's going to happen is it's going to bring me to the quote. Now, similar to the template, but in this case, this is an actual live quote that is live and real and working right now. And what I'm going to call out here is you can see that I have a cover letter area. I've got a header here. I've got parties, that is the buy, the ship to, the bill to, etc. I've got a summary detail in terms of describing effective dates and times, and perhaps summary details like discounts, etc. The section by which I'm going to create, edit and manage and configure my quote, the line item section. And then you can see I've got a terms and conditions section here. So again, a text-based section, but we've also added the ability in this case to attach documents so that if I am running a more strategic cycle where my customer is asking me to redline an MSA, we can redline that MSA and then the seller can simply come in and just add it as an attachment so that they can fulfill this actual order, not only sign the quote, but also sign the legal documents associated with this potential commercial agreement. I come down here, I've got a payment section. Now we've brought in what existed in Commerce Hub initially, the actual ability to collect the payment. So in the event that you are selling a product where payments is a part of your motion, you can just nest that right into the quoting experience direct so that the buyer doesn't have to go chase down that step as a separate step. And then of course, I finally have an acceptance step where we can identify who the signer is, who my co-signers are, and there's a lot that we can do with this, but the net headline is we've broken this into sections. Those sections can be added to in terms of content and copy, depending on what your template requirements are. Now, visibility and control. Now let's talk about speed for the seller. So a couple of things that we found our sellers really, really love is we can now do a number of things using AI to create more of an experience in this quote, depending on how freewheeling you want to let this be for the sellers. I'm actually going to come over here and I'm going to open up, in this case, the quote breeze. agent, and the assistant, I should say specifically. And you can see like the first default option is generate a cover letter. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And what we're going to do is we're actually looking at like notes and activities and emails and frankly transcripts to create a cover letter that enables the customer to see that as a seller, like, hey, we're aligned. Here's some ROI. Here's some value that you can expect to get from me. So we're going to make that process easy for the sellers just to give that buyer that first step forward, that buyer experience that we know is so important to helping our customers feel really good about moving forward with us. Additionally, I come down here into line items and you can see I can also use this agent to do things like discount management, line item management, adding products. There's a whole number of configuration steps that I can do just simply by having a conversation with the quote. And so in this case, I want to say, let's discount the on-site engineer support. Now, as a seller, I'm bold. I'm going to waive this thing. As a CFO, I'm not really in love with this concept, but let's see what happens when the seller actually goes ahead and says, hey, I'd like to make this thing waive this particular line item. You can see that the system is automatically applied a 100% discount. You can also see that my share button has changed into a request approval button. So let's actually close this and watch what happens. So control, right? Control, 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 not necessarily just for the sellers, but for the executive and revenue strategy. So I can see in this case, I have a requirement. I've got this line item discount where we've hit this approval requirement where the discount is greater than 50%. In this case, it's going to have to go to Brian. Let's say Brian is my VP of finance. Well, as a seller, I don't want it to go to Brian, so I might tweak this further. But the net headline here is we've now got a completely integrated approval engine so that we can manage all of the approvals behaviors from one single workflow editor. And so, for example, here are my line item discounts. I've got a discount between 25 and 50% for my front line. I've got another one for greater than 50%. There's that one that's hitting Brian, for example. And then you can see I come down and I've got further actions and branches that this thing can hit. For example, I might have an approval requirement if my rep does a greater than net 30 billing terms. Again, cash is king. CFO says if you go north of 30, if the customer wants net 90 payment term, you got to get an approval for that. And then finally, maybe we have a different one that is a total effective discount. Maybe you're totally allowed to discount at various percentages across any of the SKUs, but you can't go north of 20% on the total contract value. So this is just a simple set of examples where we've built really healthy approval workflows so that you can build this, your RevOps team, your admins can very easily build the structure and the guardrails so that when your sellers are in the process of actually editing the quote, they are, oh, that's not it. They're getting hit with these approvals, so they can't just willy-nilly send these things over the fence and hope for the best. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to come in here and I'm just going to edit this thing back to 0 because I want to turn off this approval. And what will happen now is we'll say, hey, green light, it looks like you're all good to share with the buyer, right? So again, I think the headline simply put here is we've given the user a tremendous amount of horsepower through engaging with the system. We're going to be making a lot more investments in the use of AI, and I don't want to get ahead of my skis on this, but there are some really killer things that we're cooking. This is really just a first look at reimagining how the sellers can engage with things like configurations and approvals requirements on a go-forward basis. But for the sake of time, let's go ahead and just quickly jump into what the buyer experience might look like. So you can see here, I've got this thing called closing agent. So this is our, in this case, our third foray into AI. First one being cover letter automation. Second one being editing the line items via a chat experience. 3 is the closing agent. So now we're going to create a really killer buyer experience by augmenting that experience with AI. So I've got this turned on, and let's just go ahead and send this to the customer. So normally what I would do is I just hit share. That would give me a link. I might pop it in an email, or I could send it directly from the system. But let's say, let's take off the hat of the seller and now let's be the buyer. So now I'm the buyer. I can see that Adam, the seller, has sent me this quote and it's waiting for my signature. I can come down here. You can see there's where my signature will go. But now you see I've got this Flora is my floor bot for this company that sells floor technologies. Now I can simply have as the final step of the actual buying committee. Maybe I'm the CFO. Maybe I wasn't a part of the evaluation. I'm going to probably have a couple of questions that my champion has done a good job explaining, but there's always going to be one or two things that perhaps he or she didn't necessarily conduct during an evaluation that I might want to know. For example, what's the warranty on this robot? So I'm just going to use, there we go. So I'm now activating the closing agent, which has been trained by materials produced by the internal team at the company. So we can inform all of the details that otherwise might have taken meetings. That sellers aren't, it's the sort of last mile. These are sort of the last scratch the itch questions. And as a result, now I can effectively go deep on this thing. And to the extent that it's not deep enough, I might say, hey, I'd like to get that on-site engineer for free. Engineer for free. Okay, so we've built the appropriate guardrails for the agent to know what it can't do, right? So it will be helpful in helping the executive scratch the itch in terms of tell me about my quote, whereas, hey, waive something or get me more points on my discount. It'll say, hey, that's not something that I can do, but I can go grab your sales rep. So I'm going to simply say, hey, please go ahead and grab my sales rep. And as a result, what will happen, and in fact, it'll just pop up in just a second. So you heard a little ding. I'm the one so I'm wearing my executive buyer hat right now. Coincidentally, that ding was for the other person, which was Adam, the sales hat guy. And so I'm going to come over here and show you that now our sellers are never in front of the executive buyer at any given time. So as long as that quote is being engaged with and that closing agent is on, I, as the seller, can now jump in here and see, here's this most recent one this was that ding here, right? Hey, tell me about the warranty. I'd like to get that engineer for free. Hey, I'm going to go ahead and connect you with the agent. And so now the seller can actually engage with the buyer right inside of the quote. Again, providing more of a seamless experience, providing visibility to the sales team, and ultimately helping create a better experience for the buyer so that they have that direct connection and that trust over time. I'll close by simply saying, yes, all of this data when this deal closes is also now meant to go downstream so that we can produce all of the revenue reporting necessary to continue to make strides in our revenue growth plan. So we've got a tremendous amount of reports out of the box. I would say, wait, this is going to be an area that we're going to make a tremendous more amount of investment in time and energy on, because when we start talking about start dates, end dates, effective dates, net billing terms, all of these data points are going to swirl around, and we're going to put them into a new object that will come in the hub that will be meant to enable you to better measure those things that traditionally are either done externally to systems. It's just a very complicated and hacky job. We're going to all that data now is going to live inside of the reporting capability so that we can continue to make investments in how we're planning on growing our revenue plan. So that was me yammering on for 20 minutes or so, but I hope that you guys can see it's all about visibility. It's all about better control so that we can overcome that cold start problem. We can overcome the challenges associated with approvals. And then finally, getting better visibility so that we can continue to make those necessary investments as we continue to scale our business. I'm going to stop sharing, Eric, and I think I'm going to toss it back to you. What do you think?
Sounds
or maybe
like
we do a Q&A.
Yeah, let's go to the chat. So if you've got a question for any of us, just type it in the chat bar down there. We've got a couple in the queue here, so a couple of brave souls. A lot of our deals seem to slow down or even stall once they get to the quoting stage. Why do you think that happens, and how can HubSpot CPQ help?
This is actually a really good general question. I would certainly say if your if your sales team has to swivel chair through the process, there's an opportunity to improve it. Just by having the product nested in the same place that the sellers are driving their sales behavior, that should ultimately help. But then the last thing I would say, having clarity with the sales team that strategies might change over quarter over quarter, and having a good connection to understanding what the executive team is trying to accomplish, that should overcome some of the typical hiccups that a seller might run into when they go click through building a quote, but something may have changed.
No. And I'd add to that, Adam, what we have seen with our clients whose businesses are growing, their sales team may be growing as well. They're scaling their sales team. And so what you'll see is that senior salespeople, they can move through this process of creating these complex products and going through the discount process and navigating approvals and getting the document, right? They've done it before. Right. And so they know all the levers that they need to pull. But a newer rep who hasn't gone through all those motions, one of the friction points is they've got to go ask. Right. That
Mm-hmm.
process isn't clearly defined for them. So that's one thing to be looking for is if you are a business that is growing and you're investing in growing your sales team, do your sales team members have the tools that will help them be efficient in that last mile? Can they quickly identify the products and the pricing and the approvals that they need to get that document, get that quote out the door?
I love simplification. It is a easy thing to say. It is a hard thing to pull off. But at the end of the day, the more we rely on business systems that will take advantage of things like AI, we're in a unique position, I think, in all of our careers where we can start to actually manifest and realize the value of like streamlining and simplification and perhaps more natural exchange with the piece of technology. So we're very much looking forward to expanding and innovating in this very space.
Adam, there's another question. Our sales team says that quoting is the part of the process everyone dreads. How can I help make it less painful? And what's different about the way HubSpot is approaching it? And the reason I brought that one up is because you're hitting on it, is that if I, as a seller, can have a conversation with my tool, and that tool can help me create that long form content with some guidance, can help me apply the right pricing and choose the right products and ensure that I've configured it appropriately so that it'll get through the approvals process. And that just simplifies it and makes it effortless for the seller.
There's a world where just having the conversation with the customer is enough for the machine to detect that we're talking about products and pricing, and I'm going to give you a pro forma first pass to overcome that cold start problem. And so there's a lot of opportunity for this. But yes, sellers want to get in and they want to have a conversation. They want to get that artifact and they want to get it in front of their customers quickly, not jump through hoops. What
Adam,
else do we have?
there's another question in here. We're struggling with disconnected data and it's making forecasting and reporting harder than it should be. Can HubSpot CPQ tackle that?
That's actually an awesome question. Again, I came from AI forecasting. This is another massive, like near and dear thing to my heart, sweet spot. The short answer is absolutely. This always happens. Businesses will set up processes and they'll tell their sellers to put anchor values in amount fields. Then they'll roll up a forecast and it'll be based on uh, uh, assumptions. And as a result, your forecast only gets good in the last 2 weeks of your quarter or your month or your year. And that is overcome now with AI because now you're actually using unstructured conversational data to render a more accurate representation earlier in the cycle. CROs and CEOs will be able to rely on a better forecast in an AI CPQ world. And we're really looking forward to seeing that value begin to materialize with our customers.
And I'll add to that on the disconnected data part. That's something that we've been helping clients solve this for over a decade. Is that you have your data scattered. And what HubSpot CPQ does for you is it brings everything on the platform. So you have that visibility through the reporting and analytics that are available to you. So if it's in HubSpot, then it's reportable, it's visible.
Yes.
You have the analytics available to you. So you don't have that disconnected data problem.
Siloed business systems is truly the bane of most hyper grow, people who are really trying to create efficiencies. That tends to be the big the big itch that needs to get scratched. And we're very pleased to be able to bring all of this into a single unified HubSpot ecosystem.
Excellent. We got one more question in here. To have access to the new quote tool, do you only need one commerce seat, or does each seller who needs access to it need a commerce seat? For the people approving the quotes, do they need a commerce seat?
Awesome question. So yes, the commerce seat is getting where the commerce hub is now getting a seat. It is for the product. It's for the process of building quotes. So you can get one seat to access everything. And in fact, approvers are not a part of the persona seat. So anybody that needs to approve is not a required licensed seat. However, the go-to-market team, which is sellers, post-sales people, anybody customer facing who's responsible for rendering either a net new or a renewal or an amendment quote, will be paying for a commerce license. And I will say that that should allude a little bit to the broader strategy, in that we want to capture value that's going to happen to cross-functional people, including net new sales, including service folks, including post-sales customer success. Again, the goal is that Commerce Hub is affiliated with unlocking and accelerating revenue strategy, and there's a lot of customer interfacing personas that are going to benefit from the use of this license.
All right. That's all the questions that were in the queue. We'll give everybody a couple more minutes to get them in. Just as a reminder, we are recording this. We'll have this available on our website at fastslowmotion.com. If you're listening today and you're curious, hey, could this work for my business? Is this right? Is HubSpot CPQ right for me? Easiest way to answer that question is to just contact us. We'll do a CPQ readiness assessment. We'll walk through how you're currently quoting, how your revenue model works, and we'll help you figure out what that good fit looks like from a HubSpot CPQ standpoint. That call usually takes less than an hour. We can get right to it. We've done it so many times. It's kind of like old school to us. And Chad loves those calls.
That's
Chad
right.
loves those conversations.
Love it. Let's chat.
We can also customize. So Adam showed you a demo today. We can customize it to your business so it becomes a little bit more real. Again, the easiest way to start that process, either contact your HubSpot rep who can get you going, or holler at us over at fastslowmotion.com/contact.
And I'll even offer up that, we are hungry right now as a team to understand what customers are trying to accomplish. Their CPQ is a big, broad topic, and we are keen to talk as well. So, and I will say again, massive thanks to the Fast Slow Motion team, Chad, of course, Eric. It's a pleasure. It was really nice to see you guys just a few weeks ago. And a big shout out to Caitlin for putting a lot of this together. Caitlin, thank you for making this experience seamless. It's going to be a bold new day. I like to say it's sort of the revolution revenue. And again, just please consider me a resource if anybody ever has questions going forward.
Adam, thanks so much. Chad, thanks. And of course, all of our attendees, thanks for showing up. We'll see you guys on the next time.